Hey everybody, welcome back to the We Are Pool Players podcast. I'm your co-host Greg Pluster.
I'm Erik Horlifson.
And we're going to dive into the topics of the day in Q Sports. Hang tight and let's get into it. All right, Erik, so let's get into the recap of all things Q Sports that's happened. I mean, with COVID, there's still not a lot happening, and kind of we touched on this in the last one. A lot of it is just action, right? A lot of action matches,
right?
So what did we have this week? The biggest one was the Danny Olson and Robinson.
Yeah, I think it was about 20,000 total bet. They might have got it up a little higher by the time they started playing. But yeah, another interesting match for Chris and another big loss for Chris in a long race.
Yeah.
Danny's been around nipping at somewhere in the top 10 Americans for the past couple of years. He finished second at the Super Billiards Expo, I believe, 2 years ago. But what I saw from him in this match was just a really improved player. I mean, assuming that their Fargos are correct, they were both about 750s. And for a 750 to beat another 750 by 30 games, you got to think, well, this guy's actually better than a 750. You know what I mean? Because stuff like that just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, and that was a big gap in score when it was finished.
Yeah,
like you would think it'd be tighter, but that was fairly big margin. What was the final score? 100 to.
Well, they were going to. Oh, right. Why am I saying 70? Did I say 70 a couple times? It was 100. It was about 100 to 65. Yeah.
Like that's a big gap. So, I mean, I saw some of it. I'm sure you saw some of it. Did it come down to the break as far as?
I didn't watch a ton of it, but the breaks that I did see Danny hit, were big. They were like, they had the commentators talking like, oh, well, he can outbreak Shane. That's how big the breaks are, right? So, yeah, again, I think it's the danger of getting locked in these long races with these big breakers, right? It's not that Robinson is that much under them, and it's not that he couldn't beat them in a race to 9 or a race to 11 tournament. But when you get locked in to a race to 100, like he did with Steyer, right, which was another big loss for him by about 30 games going to 100, you're just dealing with these guys that can, run, call it 30 to 40% of the breaks maybe, and his break and run percentage just isn't as high, right? So it adds up over that much time.
Yeah, I guess
break as well.
I guess Chris taking away from that. I guess he's, he needs to work on his break. You would think, right? You would think that, if you play a match that long and, you kind of recap, because you always want to learn from your matches, tournament or gambling or whatever. You always want to take something away and reflect to be better. Obviously he's looking at that match and saying, wow, I need to hone down the break a little bit more. And I mean, 100 to 67 or whatever. I mean, that kind of says that too, because I agree with you. Like, Chris doesn't get on the Mosconi Cup team out of thin air, right? It doesn't fall into his lap. He had earned it, right? He had earned that spot, and he performed well, at Mosconi. But then gets into this match and it just paints a different picture, right?
Yeah, and I guess he's trying to get into that big breaker category, right? Like it's a tricky one where, yes, the answer is he needs to break better. But how you're talking about just, trying to compete with guys where their break is in the top 10. Like it makes a difference. You know what I mean? So
it does. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We just posted that on the We Are Pool Players page is, whatever, pay attention to the break or whatever we had put on there. But it's so critical, especially when you get into, when you start to become a little bit more than amateur, when you start hitting kind of a, I'll use the term loosely, semi-pro kind of, dipping your toe in some pro events and so on. Like, we need to pay attention to that rack. We need to pay attention to that break speed, cue ball control. Like it's because, and you and I have discussed this before, and you just touched on it there. I mean, to win a tournament, you're running racks. It's that simple. Like you're not, I mean, there's definitely matches where I think we grind it out, right? We have grinding matches. But to win a tournament, typically, you're running your racks. You're running 25 to 35% of your racks.
Yeah. No doubt in 9-ball. No doubt whatsoever.
Yeah, 9-ball.
And now you got these, certain levels of pros that are getting their break and run percentage up over 30% in 10-ball. And you can see it deadly, right? Like,
yeah.
So
anyway, we had that match, and just and a final thing, because I think Danny was in the conversation for Mosconi. Was it this past year or the year before? I remember seeing his name popping up all over social media that he was in contention, and I think you had mentioned he had possibly been invited to maybe a boot camp, or when they did that.
Yeah, so like he's been in, especially for people in the know. He might not be as much of a household name as some of the other top American pros, but people in the know that he's been somewhere around the top 10 Americans for 2 or 3 years now. And I think a win like this for him is going to put him on the map a little more, and we'll see what the rest of the year has to bring for him. They were mentioning he's from he's from South Dakota. So is Shane. You can get out of South Dakota. It's not that. But I think he's in an area where if he's not on the road full time, he's just going to be a little bit more quiet. You know what I mean? Like they play pool up there, but not your big kind of tournaments that you see in the Midwest and the South.
Yeah. And then we had Woodward and Gomez got into it. They got into a match.
Yeah, so that one was interesting to me. It's a promoter from South Dakota, same state, brought a diamond into like a Legion and got some players to come up there and play some challenge matches. And the stream was free too, so I don't know what really his angle was for turning a profit on everything. But Woodward
good
won
for him.
50 to 30. Yeah, Woodward won 50 to 30, and again, kind of another runaway score, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that says a lot. I mean, obviously Gomez is a beast, but that says a lot, having that gap score again. It's one thing to win one of these long matches. It's certainly another thing, especially in these long matches, to have such a broad score. It really does paint a very interesting picture. And maybe not even from, physical aspect about breaking or, maybe safety play or running out or whatever. But it also, I think it paints a picture of the mental aspect of the game as well. Was there a little bit of, downtroddenness? I just made that word up. We can use that in the future. But was there something going on with Gomez where he got so far behind? Maybe he's a pro. He's not going to throw in the towel, but maybe there was a little bit of defunk, in the game. Who knows, right? Like, it's really tough.
Yeah, they were mentioning that Gomez was actually getting to the point where he wasn't even making a ball on the break, never mind getting a shot on the one. So, like, I feel like he was struggling at, like, 30 to 40% non-success with pocketing a ball. So, yeah.
That's not going to work.
Right.
And then we've got a couple matches coming up too, right? There's Oscar's playing Johnny Archer, so that'll be a very interesting match.
Yep, that one's best of 3 sets, race to, or is it best of 3 or best of 5 sets, race to 25? It's a big bet, so I think it's possible that it could be 5, but something's telling me that it's best of 3 sets, race to 25. And it's 30,000 each side. So that's
Sorry, go ahead.
That's a big bet. That's probably one of the biggest bets we've seen since players started playing again.
Who do we like in that? That's a tight one, I think.
I think it's a lot tighter than people think. Like Archer might have lost some heart in the last 5 to 10 years playing these race to 9 tournaments, but I don't think his skill level is not where it was in the 90s. But is he going to come out and beat someone in the top 20 Fargos in the world? I don't think he can do that anymore. And Oscar's bordering on the high end of players that he probably could beat, possibly, right?
Yeah, I think Oscar has possibly the advantage there. But to echo what you just said, you can't count Johnny out. You can't count Johnny out. I mean, the Scorpion can still prevail. It's an interesting match for sure. I'm excited to see that.
I'm actually playing my own challenge match this weekend, so I won't be able to watch as much of it as I would have liked. But
that's right, you and Jason Klatt.
Yeah, we're gonna do an all-around exhibition, just an hour outside of Toronto.
Yep.
Jason's been here for a while now. He was hoping that the rooms would be open as soon as he came down, but they weren't. And it's nice for us to get something going, a nice little challenge match this weekend.
Yeah, and it's streamed as well, right?
Yeah, free stream.
Yeah, we'll put it up on the page.
Sure.
And then what are you guys playing anyway?
It's an all-around challenge, so all games, 8-ball, 9-ball, 10-ball, one pocket banks, last pocket 8-ball, and straight pool. So 7 sets total, and it's an exhibition, so we're going to play out all the sets regardless of the score, but the challenge is to be the all-around winner, which will be the player to win 4 out of 7 sets, minimum 4 out of 7 sets.
And you know what? For a lot of us amateurs out there who play, a lot of the different games. I mean, I love playing all the games, and for the amount of game variations that I play, I've never been able to play someone, all the games, all the different games, in one set or match or whatever. Like, how exciting would that be? Like, that would be so much fun. It would have been interesting if the halls were open. You guys could have played a thrown snooker in there, because I know you have a snooker background too. So that would have been good to see too. But no, that should be fun. We'll put the stream up and as well. So let's get into. We have to touch on this. It was such a huge. It was everywhere. But the Billy Thorpe and Rob Sayas match went a little sideways. I think everybody has seen the video now. It's tough to get into, say the right and wrong of the situation. Obviously, there's other ways to handle that. Like, and I mean, at the end of the day, you should have just racked the balls right. we wouldn't have had any of this. but yeah, it was it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch. I mean, I played Billy at Brickyard a few years back, and we got to talking, and we were a little bit deep in the tournament, and he was so down to earth, and we were kind of joking around, and he was very humble. Like, I enjoyed playing him. And he was just very, very nice, very down to earth. So seeing that, I was really surprised. And I had met Rob. I've met Rob as well. And I was just really surprised by that. And moves or not, racking wrong, this, whatever, any kind of moves or not, obviously there's different ways to kind of go about that. I mean, Billy obviously reflected on that, pretty quickly, when that came out, he got back on social media pretty quick and kind of threw out the apology there. And then he posted an even more apologetic post. And then he went on to the Pool Players podcast and actually had that interview to apologize directly to his fan base as well, after Q-Tex had pulled the sponsor. Like, there was a lot of things happened with this. And it's very controversial, because there's a lot of people on social media saying, that's pool, because these are the two sides. That's pool. That's what we do. Who cares? They got Billy's back, which is great. It's great to have, to support him. But the other side of it is, how can you be a professional and act that way? And then there's a tiny little third pieces. And this one, I mean, it's not the root cause of it, but it still bothers me a little. Turn off the stream. Like, why is the stream still on? Like, how did
Right.
nobody turn off the stream? But I mean, that's not the root of it, right? The root of it is, obviously Billy should have dealt with that differently. Somebody should have jumped in to say, like, Billy, this is I think there were a few people trying to jump in, but Billy, you're pro, you're on the stream. Like it's almost like nobody really paid attention to the bigger picture of what was happening. It was more about the action, the rack, Rob and Billy, and that's not necessarily what it's about anymore, right? So, so it's really unfortunate, and I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, so for me, I think the first thing I noticed is this was probably the first time that since I've been playing pool that there was a really controversial incident where a player actually ended up losing his sponsorship. I mean, players have been dropped from their sponsors before. Like, I guess drop is the wrong word. Their relationships have ended with their sponsors, but not over one incident, from what I can remember. So, and you're talking about something that happened on like an after-hours stream, right? You're not talking about something that happened in, the call it the heat of a tournament, or something where players were expected to be acting a certain way. And I think, the situation just got out of hand, right? To the point where QTech didn't have much reproach in how they were, in how they could handle it. Like they had to let him go.
Yeah.
But for me, I think, I thought about that. So it's about players are going to be expected, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it shows that players are going to be expected to hold themselves to the professional level that they're kind of getting to. I'm not saying by like what he's accomplished. I'm saying that pool is just entering that, proper professional stage of tournaments, right? And
especially with Matchroom.
Right. And so when you have stuff like this going on, well, you're bringing it back to, just like a pool room type of etiquette, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is for American players that they still play tournaments like this. That I'm not saying stuff like this happens every weekend, or it's actually pretty rare, but you're not talking about like going to play in a Euro Tour at a fancy hotel with, tables set up and proper bleachers and probably no alcohol there. You're talking about that this happened at a typical American bar table tournament with, with a Calcutta. Not that Calcutta is affected anything like that, but you know what I mean. It's like a gambling type tournament, right? And it's just a different atmosphere where stuff like this can produce itself, right? And I don't particularly see anything in the U.S. changing in the next couple years. Like there still is not one U.S. Pro Tour where you're going to see where stuff like something like this could never happen, right? There's independent U.S. Pro events, but like the International Open, Super Billiards Expo, but you're only talking like less than 5 of them. It's certain of the tournaments that these guys are playing in are tournaments similar to where the incident happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that it's like that all the time, but the reality is it's not the same as a Euro Tour or other tournaments in other countries, like a professional tournament in China or Taiwan. Do you know what I mean? It's just not the same feel. So,
well, what I find interesting is, and I think a lot of people see this, is the bar has been set.
Right.
Like the bar has been set, and it's a small handful, but there's definitely going to be a handful of players in the U.S. and around the world. But there's a handful of players now where you can't act like that, or that type of controversy, that type of mainstream sports etiquette. Like the bar has been set. I saw the one post by Mike Molina, and he's in a lot of the action there, and he's kind of in the know. And I think he put it best when he posted when he did the share on the QTech's announcement was they had no choice. You know, they stay with them, controversy. They drop them, controversy. Like they really were kind of backed into a corner, and they kind of made the only decision they could make. And I mean, you know, Billy will pick up another sponsor. You know, that'll be fine. I think a lot of people, a lot of the pool community, do see him for making that mistake, and they are starting to kind of forgive at least the ones who were kind of up in arms about it. But I mean, we'll move on from this, but it definitely sent a message to the community to say, you know, we're in it to win it now. Like we're taking pool to that level, that you can't do that. Right. So I don't know. So it's great to see that from a broad scope, right? From a broader picture, it's great to see that. It's unfortunate that has to happen to somebody, right? Like really anyone. And then especially somebody we've met, we know, whatever. So anyway, you know, I think it's definitely a move on situation. I think the bar has been set. I think it did send a message, a clear message to a handful of pros. I mean, not like it's happening every weekend, but very interesting stuff. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just hope he can recover from it. And I hope that there's no, like, you know, he's taken his punishment. He's lost the sponsorship he had. I just hope there's no like X amount of a bunch of invitational tournaments. Maybe let him sit out one or two or something, but I just hope it doesn't follow him that far, because I know him as well, and he's a good guy. It's not like, you know, this is something that is like regular behavior for him, right? So
no, I mean, and to be honest, for anyone who's seen the video, and I'm sure everybody has, you know, it's one thing to lose your temper, but you know, when he shot out a couple of those slurs, that was the nail that sealed the coffin. Like that was the straw that broke the camel's back, per se. You just can't say that sort of stuff, and it's, you know, it's not appropriate, and it is 2021, and it's not about free speech. It's about having consequences to your actions. You know, it's about having respect for others. And, you know, unfortunately, I think that's really what kind of drove it home. But again, I mean, does that little snippet paint a true picture of who Billy Thorpe is? Right. And I mean,
I don't think it does.
You know, I personally don't think it does either. And I can tell you right now, the number one person, you know, who feels the worst is Billy, right? Like he, you know,
sure,
guaranteed, because he is, at least from what I met, you know, he is very down to earth. So, you know, I'm sure he's definitely reflected on it. So, but anyway, so, you know, that aside, we definitely had to touch on it. You know, so let's get into the Matchroom, kind of get into the topic for the week, and that's the Champions League coming up. So March 22nd to 29th, and they've picked a venue now, Stadium MK in Milton Keynes. How do you say it? Keynes.
I think Milton Keynes. Yeah,
it's in the UK. It's in the That's why I know it's in the UK. So, so now you know what? I'm surprised though. Now maybe because it's travel restrictions, maybe because people are still trying to balance how to pay for it, how to get backing for it, how to get sponsored for it. Because again, a lot of people aren't playing right now, right? I mean, we've seen a few action matches, but there's nobody really playing. So, you know, right now there's only six or seven people signed up.
Yeah,
who's confirmed.
It's going to be an invitational.
That's what I meant. Sorry,
yeah, it's a 49-player invitational. So Matchroom's going to be rolling out their invites, but it just shows you how things are going to go, right? We're talking like we're a month away from the tournament, and I believe they'll get 49, but every case is going to be an individual case. Like, do those players need some kind of waiver from their government to leave their country? Right?
Yeah.
You know, have they been playing? Maybe they haven't been playing much, and they don't even want to play in this tournament, right? So it's just going to be different little logistics around that. But I did notice that Shane's going, so you know the U.S. must be okay to travel.
Yeah, Skylar as well.
Izzy, yeah.
Yeah.
And a few different European countries. Albin's in there from Austria. Kachi's in there from Albania. So I guess I'm not 100% up to date on what the world travel situation is, but it seems like these players can get out of their country if they want to.
Yeah, and not to mention the financial impact on this. Right? The financial impact on this too is, a lot of people, right? They're not playing, and whose dime, or even when does the dime get split with Matchroom on the financial responsibilities of getting there, the hotel, the commitment, so. There might be some dialogue on that. And then, like you had just mentioned, is some of these players may not be playing right now, so, a lot. So do they want to commit to that kind of financial commitment to play as much as it's amazing exposure for them as a player and Q Sports itself, because it's going to be on the air. So it's just being 2 months away, and there's only 6 players so far. You would have thought that the invites went out and people would sign up fairly quickly. But it's 86,000 prize pool. So it's not a massive prize pool.
No, it's not.
Unless you live in the UK and you walked to the venue, right?
Sure.
So
yeah, so you're talking about a prize fund that's under 6 figures, right? And you're talking about 49 players entering, so you got to think that first prize is not going to be more than 20,000. The format is a format they've never used before. It's 7 groups of 7 players, round robin, races to 5. Everyone plays everyone in their group, and the winners of the 7 groups advance to a second group of 7, and the top 4 from that group of 7 will play off in a bracket format. There'll only be 4 players left, so semifinals and finals.
And those 4 might be seeded or based on points, or just a redraw, maybe. Well,
yeah,
we'll have to see.
I'd probably assume that. Yeah, right. You're going to have 4 of the top 49 left, so they might do a 1-4, 2-3 seeding in the final 4.
Yeah, but they're probably all hitting it pretty good.
No kidding.
They're probably in stroke.
This was the last round robin tournament I saw like this was the IPT, and it's an interesting format for pool because it's tough to win 8 pool matches in a row, right? Especially against top players, right?
Sure. Short race too.
Yeah, sure. But when you're in these round robin situations, you could take 1 or 2 losses and still advance. And what the IPT was there was 8 players in a group, and 4 would advance out of the 8. So you could lose multiple matches throughout the course of the tournament, but still have a winning record and make it near the end, right?
Yeah. Round robins. I personally, I love the World Championship used to be round robin.
The group stages, and then it went into a single knockout. Yeah,
and that was always interesting. I love the format myself, to see how your fave players are doing, or how your country players are doing, and follow their matches and see if they can get out of their groups, and even playing in a few round robin events myself. I enjoy playing in it because of what you just mentioned. I always had a chance. You kind of always have a chance to get out of your group, right? Well, until near the end. But yeah, no. Round robin's a very interesting format. I'm excited to see how this plays out. But the 6 players. So hopefully everybody else, hopefully everybody signs up shortly. I'm sure they'll update that list this week. And from a Canadian perspective, since we're up here, Alex for sure was invited. Johnny would be invited as well, I would imagine.
It's probably borderline.
Do we know? Do we know?
No. It's speculative, right? There's nothing saying that they don't have all 49 players and they're just going to announce them 6 at a time or something, right? That's possible too.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, so that's happening in the UK, and that's March 22nd, March 29th. So, and it's going to be, it's going to be on air. So that's the first event, and I'm so excited to see it. I'm excited to see what this does. I mean, kind of what we touched on last year, or the last podcast was, the next couple of years are pivotal, especially if we can get through this COVID stuff and start getting out there and getting to the tables and getting the tournaments going and so on.
Yeah, well, Matchrom's. It looks like Matchrom's going to lead the way for the next couple of years. So
absolutely.
hopefully all their events go well and just go from there.
That's right. So we're coming up to the half-hour mark, so we're probably going to wrap this up. Thanks everybody for listening, and join. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and give us a comment, give us a rating. And by all means, message us if you want to hear a certain topic of the week that we can dive into and dissect. And this is Greg Plester and Erik Orlison, and I'm out.
Okay, guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.